What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Clippers Heat. So, the biggest thing that stood out to me from this particular game, and it's been something that stood out all season, and this is going to be a theme that I talk about. The idea of like basketball character is a concept that I talk about on the show. And to me, that is like the little intangible kind of like effort, energy, focus, discipline, competitiveness things that I think bear out over the course of an 82 game season and are typical hallmarks for a team that goes on to win an NBA championship. Like if you look back through NBA history, it's like last year, the Denver Nuggets were the 1 seed in the Western Conference. Like we talk about teams like the Lakers and the Warriors, teams that can have potential to go on a playoff run, but like the team that kind of wallows around in mediocrity during the regular season typically doesn't win. That's just what NBA history tells us. That doesn't mean it can't happen. Obviously, it's not impossible. It's just extremely unlikely. And NBA history tells us typically not, right? And you can go further back. The Warriors, they were right up there with the Phoenix Suns at the trade deadline. And then Steph Curry hurt his foot. And that's why they ended up a little bit lower in the standings. But they were consistently one of the best teams in that regular season. They were 45-19 when Steph Curry played. The Bucks were a 1 seed. The Lakers were a 1 seed. The Raptors were a 2 seed. So this is why we look at these trends over the course of the regular season. It's important to talk about what works in the regular season and what doesn't, what translates in those specific kind of like X's and O's things. But in the bigger picture, if you're not actually trying to build championship character over 82, typically you'll run into some trouble. And we're on an extended stretch here from the Clippers where they've been the best team in the league since November 17th. They are 30-8. That is the best record in the league over that span. That's basically ever since they started 0-6, right after the Harden trade, they have been the best team in the league. They're just 1 game back of the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. They're trending heavily in that direction. So the Clippers are paying their dues, and you can see it. Like, this is a random road game against the Miami Heat, a tough team to play, well coached, always does the right thing, right? They're gritty. They get games down into the mud and try to expose your weaknesses. And it'd be so easy to just bring a lackadaisical effort and do the bare minimum to try to win that game or maybe punt a game like that. But like, no, I'm watching this game and Paul George is like just contending on the perimeter against Terry Rozier, getting up in his business and applying back pressure and disrupting the basketball. He was switching on to Bam Adebayo in a transition cross match and getting a stop in the post. I'm seeing James Harden wall up Jimmy Butler in a post up and stripping him clean underneath the basket, like from the top down, from the stars all the way down the roster. These guys are so locked in on the details. And I think that kind of stuff matters. And when you look at it juxtaposed with some of these other teams where it's like this consistent theme of like conserving energy and like managing the regular season and just trying to survive it versus attacking it. And NBA history tells us it's usually the talented veteran team that attacks the regular season that runs away with it at the end of the day. And the Clippers, again, they've got some question marks. They're not a good defensive rebounding team. They rely heavily on pull-up jump shooting. They have some of those things that could concern you, but they're doing everything they can, at least within what's under their control, to maximize themselves within this season. They held Miami to just 6 points from about the 10-minute mark of the fourth quarter to about the 4-minute mark of the fourth quarter. On the other end of the floor, James Harden got his step-back 3 going. He had 3 step-back 3s, including one going to his left, which is one you don't see too often from James Harden. 2 of them were and ones. James Harden's actually been the very best pull-up shooter in the league this year. He's getting 1.17 points per pull-up jump shot. That's a 59% effective field goal percentage. There are 29 players in the NBA who have logged at least 250 pull-up jump shots this season. James Harden is in first place in this group. So remember, that was where we saw that right around 61% effective field goal percentage. That's where we saw Steph Curry and Kevin Durant last year. Both of those guys are down this year. James Harden up at that 59% is actually at the highest mark in the league at volume. Another big guy who made a big offensive contribution during that run there at the beginning of the fourth quarter was Norman Powell, because the Heat actually took briefly a lead there. Haywood Highsmith had a layup that put him up by 1 in the early fourth quarter, and then the Clippers went on this defensive run, and James Harden was hitting a step back three, and then Norman Powell made a couple of plays out of closeouts in the left corner. He had a pull up three, or a catch and shoot three, I should say, and then a one dribble pull up kind of ripping through to his right, and next thing you know, they're up by 13. And just like James Harden has been the best pull-up shooter in the league, Norman Powell has been the very best spot-up player in the league this year. He's getting 1.38 points per possession. There are 32 players in the NBA this year that have logged at least 200 spot-up possessions, and he's first place on that list. And again, there's a big difference between looking at spot-up possessions versus just catch-and-shoot shooting. A catch-and-shoot jump shot is an important part of being able to attack a closeout, because that's the only thing. If you can demonstrate that you can knock that shot down consistently, that's what will get the defender closing out at you hard. But I talk about high-level closeout attacking all the time, because against the very best defenses in the league, they're typically going to take away most of your open catch and shoot opportunities, especially for your best shooters. And then from there, if you beat a closeout, so if a guy chases you off the line and you rip past him to the right or to the left, usually help defense is going to come over and take away anything for you at the rim. And so a lot of times that high level closeout attacking is the ability to make a shot that's in between that catch and shoot and the drive and kick or the driving layup. And Norman Powell has just been the very best player in the league this year at not just hitting those catch and shoot threes, but reading that closeout defender and slashing off of it and making plays in the middle. 1.38 points per possession. Think about how insane that is. That's another level above, Michael Porter Jr. last year was one of the best in the league, and he was below 1.3. So that goes to show you just how insanely good Norman Powell has been in those spot up situations this year. But by the time Kawhi got back into the game in the middle of the fourth quarter, they were already up 13. Game was basically over at that point. Miami made a little kind of fake late run, but they never truly threatened. And then they get out of Miami with the win. And again, it is a tough balance between conserving energy and building good habits. But in my opinion, it is better to aggressively attack the regular season. Obviously, I'm not saying play hurt. I'm just saying bringing effort and energy rather than trying to conserve effort and energy is the way to prepare yourself for what is the impossible grind of the NBA playoffs. To win 4 times out of 7, winning in these 2-week chunks, beating a team 4 times out of 7, and then turning around and doing it again, and then turning around and doing it again, and then turning around and doing it again against increasingly more difficult opponents. It's a grind. You don't get to take your time and load manage during that stretch. And so, again, actually preparing your body for that type of grind over the course of the regular season, but above and beyond that, even to just the habits and the continuity with your lineups, the discipline to actually make the right decision on both ends of the floor within your scheme. It is an important part of that. And I've just been so impressed by the Clippers this year. They've just completely and utterly attacked this regular season since the James Harden trade. It's especially unusual considering some of the older veteran players on that roster. Kawhi's MVP case is starting to gain steam. Again, like we talked about, 30-8 since November 17th, best record in the span. Over that span, Kawhi's only missed 4 games all season, shooting 53% from the field, 45% from 3, 89% from the line. That's 64% in true shooting percentage. That is the highest mark of his career. He's also having the best defensive season he's had in years. As a matter of fact, he's getting 2.6 stocks per game. That's steals plus blocks. That's the most he's had in a single season on average since he was with the San Antonio Spurs. So you're getting a more engaged defensive version of Kawhi, another big element of having James Harden to help with the ball handling load. And then it's showed up in the numbers. The Clippers are 12 points per 100 possessions better when Kawhi is on the floor versus off the floor. Now, will he win the MVP? It remains to be seen. The biggest thing that works against him on that front is that the Clippers do have a lot of talent. And when you look around and you see, James Harden and Paul George on the court, a lot of times that can kind of sway voters. But Kawhi's playing some of the best basketball of his career, and it very much belongs in that conversation. And if they keep winning at this rate, I think he has a very good chance to win it. But Zubac's coming back now. He came back on a minutes restriction, it looked like, last night's game. Amir Coffey's another guy I wanted to shout out. It's just another example of kind of a useful two-way wing that they have coming off the bench, can really shoot the basketball and is a good athlete. It has some good length and brings some speed to that perimeter defense core that they're already so deep in. Again, their only red flag really is that they still struggle with defensive rebounding, and they just rely really heavily on pull-up jump shooting. And so that just adds some variance when they get to the postseason. On the Miami front, they've now lost 8 out of 10 games. They just cannot score the basketball right now. They have a 107.8 offensive rating over this 10-game span. That's 29th in the NBA. Only the Grizzlies have been worse over the last 10 games. And that's despite Jimmy Butler being awesome. Jimmy Butler's shooting 58% from the field and 58% from three over this span. But Jaime Jaquez has been slumping a little bit since he came back from his injury. Tyler Herro has been shooting below 40% over this span. Terry Rozier, since joining the Heat, 33% from the field, 22% from three. So like they're just struggling outside of that Jimmy Butler position. Bam Adebayo is only giving you like 16 points a game over this span. And, you know, some of this is to be expected because when you add a new kind of ball handler into the group, it just disrupts the flow of everybody. And so some of that just needs to be sorted out. Like, do I think Miami's going to be this bad on offense this long? Probably not, right? But they're also not shooting particularly well. Like, as a team, they're shooting just 34% from three over this 10-game span. That's bottom 5 in the league over that stretch. So like a lot of it will turn around, I think, just as they get a little bit more used to playing with each other. They've added legitimate offensive firepower here, and I do expect this team to be a better offense in the long run. That said, over the span, they're also 22nd in defense and 21st in rebounding. So a little bit of a slump here. This kind of thing can happen, and we see this like we were just talking about it with the Sacramento Kings. Like for most of January, they were pretty mediocre. And then all of a sudden in the last couple of weeks, they're kind of snapping back into form. This time of year, you see lots of ebbs and flows in teams, especially teams that have made it to the playoffs before and can struggle a little bit with motivation over the course of the regular season. I can never be out on the Miami Heat, but they're definitely playing some bad basketball right now.